Ever since I started this channel, I was operating under the assumption that the US government was finally behind the whole idea of our species returning to the moon, this time to stay. We've been told this over and over again by the officials at NASA. However, an updated draft of the spending bill for the US fiscal year 2022, dated September 4th, offers some very troubling news. Now, this bill is called the House Budget Reconciliation Bill, essentially a bill that's taking care of all of the fine points in the spending bill for 2022 that's been going through the motions for quite some time, and it includes some extra money for NASA. Bill Nelson asked for an additional $5 billion for infrastructure. He almost got that, $4 billion. However, he also asked for $5.4 billion for HLS to allow NASA to select a second company alongside SpaceX to develop a lander so that there would be competition, something that I've advocated for some time on this channel. And Congress gave him zero. And if you think that this has to do with Congress believing 100% in SpaceX and Starship and feeling that this is the only solution that we really need to go to the moon, well, you'd be wrong, because this only provides jobs pretty much in one or two states, namely Texas and California, and that's not something that politicians are going to be very interested in. On top of that, this reconciliation bill also provides $388 million for climate change research and development. $388 million for that, but nothing additional for the moon. Now, dear God, the last thing that I want to do on this channel is to start a debate on climate change. That's been going on for 30 years at least, actually longer. But the fact of the matter is if it does exist, if it is a problem being caused by us, that's something that these guys certainly believe in. Congress as a whole and the US government believes that this is a problem, as do the governments of most other major nations. However, if it is indeed something that's being caused by humanity, and once again, I'm not saying that it is. Our climate is incredibly complex and difficult to understand. But if climate change is a human-caused crisis, then recent events suggest that action needs to be taken now and not just study. And that action, believe it or not, has a lot to do with our natural satellite. My name is Jordan Wright. I was born in the same year that the human race took its first steps on the surface of another world, and then we promptly betrayed those people's legacy by never going back. But now, over half a century later, there's a new breed of pioneers that are seeking to finish what these people set out to do so long ago. But there is trouble as well. Corrupt contractors who are looking to take advantage of one of the most underfunded departments of the US government, and an unsustainable plan that is doomed to cancellation, as the Apollo project was. Something has to change. So it's time for commentators like me to stop being polite and start getting angry. This, as just about all of you know, is Bill Nelson, and he's in the midst of talking about the Chinese effort on Mars, the huge amount of success that they've had there, and the fact that they are a potent competitor for the United States in both on Mars and on the moon, and that we can no longer be resting on our laurels, and we are going to lose the initiative in space and all the advantages that there are out there there to the Chinese if we do not increase fiscal spending on NASA and other projects related to it. You would think that this would be enough, that competition with the People's Republic of China would be sufficient incentive to drive Congress to fund NASA more aggressively, but this has not been happening. So instead, what I would like to do is show all of the things that have been happening recently as far as the climate is concerned and how space and the moon could possibly solve this problem. Since the turn of the century, the Earth has been on fire to a degree unparalleled in recorded human history. The Great Fire of London, for example, which was a cataclysmic fire by their standards in the 17th century, burned 2 square kilometers. By way of comparison, a fire in 2019 in South Korea was 5 square kilometers, and the 2019 Bandipur forest fire in India was 44 square kilometers, and I'm just getting started. In 2018, a fire in California started by a campfire burned 620 square kilometers. In 2007, there were coastal fires in Croatia that burned 1,590 square kilometers. And in 2003, the European heat wave caused fires in Portugal to the size of 2,150 square kilometers, 1,000 times larger than the Great Fire of London. And it gets even bigger, guys. The 2018 Attica wildfires in Greece, 2,700 square kilometers. The 2020 California complex fire, 4,100 square kilometers. The 2017 Chile wildfires, 5,700 square kilometers. And in the midst of all this, only 2 fires, at least huge ones, have taken place before the 21st century. One in 1871 and the other in 1923, but the 1923 one was caused by an earthquake in a major city. And the 21st century firestorm hasn't spared the southern hemisphere either. In 2019, there was a firestorm in the Amazon rainforest that consumed over 9,000 square kilometers. In 2003, the eastern Victorian alpine bushfires in Australia, 13,000 square kilometers. Back in 2010, there was a massive fire in Bolivia that consumed 15,000 square kilometers. Then back north to California in 2020, 17,500 square kilometers. And then to Siberia, a place that generally doesn't have a lot of wildfires, at least not in the past, because of the extremely cold temperatures there. 26,000 square kilometers burned in 2019. And it's generally very cold in the Northwest Territories of Canada as well, but that didn't stop 34,800 square kilometers from burning in 2014. Now, to be fair, in 1987, there was a fire double this size called the Black Dragon Fire in China. However, this is one of the very few mega fires that took place in the 20th century, compared to the unbelievable number of fires that I've been talking about since the year 2000. It's a very troubling pattern. Now, another of these 20th century fires took place in Indonesia in 1997, kind of close to the year 2000, and it was 97,000 square kilometers, but that was dwarfed by the 2020 Australia Black Summer fires, which consumed 186,000 square kilometers, killed 33 people, and destroyed almost 10,000 buildings, together with killing over 3 billion animals. Of the 22 largest fires that have broken out since the middle of the 19th century, 16 of them have taken place after the year 2000. 16 out of 22. 3 of the large fires that weren't in the 20th century were in the 19th. So in the 19th and 20th centuries, we experienced about 3 giant monster fires per year. And now, in this century, we've experienced 16 in the first 2 decades. That certainly indicates a disturbing trend, no matter what's causing it. And if there's any chance that we are causing it with our own technology and our own pollution, then something should definitely be done about it. And then, of course, you've got the storm issue. In New York, just recently, with Hurricane Ida, the first and only flash flood ever declared in New York City happened with a vengeance, killing quite a number of people, not only in New York, but throughout the Northeast, even though this storm made landfall way down in Louisiana. And as a matter of fact, nearly half of the most powerful Atlantic hurricanes have happened in the last 20 years, and these records go all the way back to the beginning of the 20th century. So, granted, you may not have the best information from the hurricanes back in 1910 or something like that, but the fact that we've had this many very powerful storms in the last 20 years is also disturbing. Once again, this could be a natural climactic shift, but if we are indeed causing it, then something should be done. If there's a chance that we're causing it, then something should be done. And the solution can be found in space and on the moon. Let me tell you how. Less than 2 months ago, a new type of solar array was tested and deployed on the ISS. It's called the Roll-Out Solar Array, or ROSA. Actually, the new one is called the iROSA because it's on the ISS. And this will be providing the primary source of energy to the International Space Station. These things are far smaller than the existing solar panels, far lighter, and can be rolled up essentially like a carpet. These arrays weigh 1/3 of a metric ton apiece and generate 40 kilowatts apiece. Now, that's assuming that they're constantly exposed to the sunlight, which means that they would need to be in a sun-synchronous orbit as opposed to the orbit that the International Space Station is currently in. But still, it could very well be done once the Starship is completed and in operation. So just for fun, let's crunch a few numbers. A Starship could carry 300 of these things, theoretically, with 12 megawatts worth of power. Now let's say we have Elon's 1,000 Starship fleet. Assuming that you launch these 1,000 Starships over the course of a month, in which case you would be launching about 33 a day, then you would be looking at 12,000 megawatt hours of electricity in 1 month generated by these things, and you could just keep piling it on. 12,000 megawatt hours would be enough to power all of New York City. And if you want to talk about powering the entire United States, I'll just go ahead and quote Elon Musk. Quote, "If you wanted to power the entire US with solar panels, it would take a fairly small corner of Nevada or Texas or Utah. You only need about 100 miles by 100 miles of solar panels to power the entire United States. The batteries you need to store the energy to make sure you have 24/7 power is 1 mile by 1 mile. 1 square mile, that's it," unquote. But a solar array in orbit wouldn't need to be nearly that ambitious, simply because the sun never goes down, obviously. You also don't need as resilient of materials because your solar array isn't having to deal with rainfall or wind or any of the other factors that tend to wear down a solar array over time on the planet. So many things that would make a solar array both more efficient and also make it last longer. Space junk, of course, would be a bit of a problem. It would require maintenance and repair, but all of these things would employ people, lots of people, and also lead the human race to building lots of starships in order to deploy this kind of solar or these kinds of solar arrays. But what does the moon have to do with any of this? Well, one of the problems with deploying a space-based solar array is the Earth's gravity. It takes a tremendous amount of energy, namely the super heavy, in order to get 100 tons off the surface. But what happens if you bring the material from the moon? And everything you need for solar panels is in the lunar regolith. You don't need any raw materials at all brought from Earth in order to manufacture truly colossal solar power plants in sun-synchronous orbit. It's a lot easier to get these materials to this orbit from the moon than it is from Earth, simply because of the massive gravity difference. You wouldn't need a super heavy anymore, you just need plain old Starship in order to transport the necessary materials, or you might not even need Starship. An electromagnetic mass driver could also transport the necessary materials, and as you can see, they form sort of a bell shape. This allows the solar energy to collect and be concentrated to a single point and then beam to the surface of the Earth via microwaves. And there's a microwave receiver on Earth which then receives the energy and transmits it to cities that surround that particular receiver. Now, you could also transmit the energy using lasers, but that's a lot easier to weaponize. So here's an animation of how this whole system would work, or one concept that was developed by the Japanese Space Agency. Two colossal mirrors concentrating the sun's energy and adjusting depending on where they are in relation to the sun, but concentrating that energy to one point and then the energy being beamed down to Earth via microwave. The microwave receiver would be quite large, a couple of kilometers in diameter or so, in some isolated, uninhabited part of the world, and then the energy transmitted via good old-fashioned electric wires to a city. And there's no limit to the amount of energy that you could gather from the sun. Solar panels in orbit are just simply far more efficient, about 20 times as efficient as solar panels on Earth. It's the obvious solution to a big problem. And here's lunar-based solar at its ultimate stage, as envisioned by the Shimizu Corporation. Lunar solar cells extending 11,000 kilometers around the equator and ranging in width from a few kilometers to 400 kilometers at their widest point, continuously generating solar power, transmitting the energy to the Earth via microwave, and transmitting the power via a transmission cable depending on where the sun is shining on the moon during its orbit around the Earth. This, of course, would be a job of titanic proportions, but remember, you wouldn't need to bring very much from Earth at all. Virtually everything you would need for this kind of solar array is already on the moon. The lunar regolith can create ceramics, concrete, glass, solar cells, even oxygen, and of course water, depending on where you're looking on the moon. So everything you need is already there. You just need to build it with in-situ materials. Now, this could be done with an army of self-replicating robots. This is something that Shimizu Corporation has already proposed, or it could be done in a more conventional fashion, utilizing civil engineering work, an army of human workers working part-time on the moon. A whole variety of different ways of employing a huge percentage of the human population, assuming you could get them there. And the only way to get them there, of course, at least efficiently, would be Starship. And it would generate an insane amount of power. We're talking between 18 to 24 terawatts worth of power, or enough to take care of all of our energy needs until 2050. So here's my philosophy. If climate change is indeed a clear and present danger, then these sorts of scenes are going to start becoming commonplace. This planet is going to become more and more hellish with each passing year, and that's something I don't want my children to inherit. If it isn't true, if this is some sort of media hoax or something along those lines, then we still have the option to use a more efficient, cutting edge, and innovative form of powering our civilization than oil, gas, and coal. Those are the old ways of doing things, just as old-fashioned as expendable rockets. Why use them if we don't have to? And also, if this is the kind of incentive that our governments require in order to go back to the moon and start exploiting its resources, because right now they don't seem to have much of a sense of urgency about the matter. If this is a way that we can accomplish this, then I'm all for it, whether this is a real problem or not. If you like what I have to say, if you want to see more videos like this come out in the future, then please support the folks who are supporting me already on Patreon. It's a lot of the same people at this point. It isn't fair to them, I think, just ask them to keep giving every single month. It'd be nice to see some fresh faces, but if you're unable to, I quite understand, and a like and a subscribe would be very much appreciated as well. So until our government recognizes that space has many very important uses, and going back to the moon is absolutely critical for many different reasons, I urge all of you to stay angry about space.